Hi, welcome to UK GK TV. Yet another week, and we've survived, and we're feeling a bit better than we did last week. And to start with, I just wanted to talk about this. This is a magazine, and we were talking a couple of months back about magazines and how they were effective on the hobby and how a lot of us got inspiration from them. And this one in particular is one I really like. It's called Dark Side magazine, and it's edited by a guy called Alan Bryce, and it's got a kind of a small publishing company that does Dark Side and a few other things, but he also publishes books. And this is the latest issue, and you can see there's a beautiful illustration there of the Bride of Frankenstein, Colin Clive there, Elsa Lanchester, and that's a piece of art by Rick Melton. And if you know anything about Rick Melton, you'll know he does some fantastic horror illustrations, and you can buy compendiums of his work, and you can buy sort of like prints of his work. Some of it's a bit raunchy and saucy, but when he gets to grips with something like this, which is a very traditional rendition of the Bride of Frankenstein, if you look at that, this is such a good piece of work that they've actually hidden the banner headline behind the head of the bride there, because this is too good a painting not to use. And I just thought, a nice piece of paper in your hand is a great magazine. The other thing it's good about it is it kind of takes a sort of, it's almost, when you look at it you think it's kind of a sort of teenage boy juvenile stuff, but when you read it, it's actually fascinating commentary on horror movies and fantasy. So just giving it a bit of a shout out really. So if you want a magazine to read, this is it. What sparked my interest this week in particular, two things. There's a little known horror movie called Kiss versus the Phantom, I think, of the Paradise or something like that, and it's the first and only movie Kiss made. Now, you know, Aurora made figure kits of Kiss in their heyday, but the thing is, this article really got to me. Crawling Terrors, and this is basically all the giant spider movies that were ever made. And we were talking about recently, I was talking to a friend about how we love things like Giant Scorpion, Big Gila Monster, all of those kind of things. And that came up because when I was sorting through my kit stash, I found this. I've got the old set of these. This is Gigantics kits. It was AMT Ertl, and basically inside that is a massive scorpion attacking the city with a lovely little backdrop and stuff like that. So it just goes to show there's kind of a synchronicity sometimes between what interests you and what comes up in a magazine. Now, the other reason that I'm talking about this is, as well as Alan, as well as publishing this magazine, he publishes a series of books. And I've got a title here for you. It's called Terror on Television. I think the week before last or the month before last, we were looking at the Twilight Zone and things like that. And this is a book that this publisher publishes all about television horror. So it's American TV, British TV, and also back in the day, BBC Two used to do the horror double bill, and it's all about that and how much that's had an influence. The beauty of these books, of course, is this: they're very, very well illustrated. And if you're like me, a bit of an artist, or you're just interested in the horror genre, these books are full of photographs. A lot of them won't be the general photographs that pop up when you Google these films. They will be lobby cards and posters, rarities and stuff like that. So I would thoroughly recommend Terror on the Television. There's other ones. There's basically one on Hammer, one on Amicus, one on slasher movies, one on British horror movies too. All books that I would recommend, but particularly Terror on Television. So that's just my little insert for the week. And like I say, a lot of the illustrations in the magazine and in some of the book covers is by Rick Melton, and that's always worth a look. So thanks for indulging me, and take yourself a look at Dark Side. Thank you. Well, this is a little bit of a product review, and I'm very interested in this. This is what I would call a pull saw. In other words, it's a saw that cuts on the backstroke.
That's right.
When you pull it back, it's a little bit like a coping saw. It pulls on the back and you steer it on the front stroke.
That's it.
This is a particularly good one though, isn't it? It's called a shark saw. It's made in Japan. Now, anybody that knows anything about blades, well, or particularly in our hobby, as soon as you talk about Japan, you think it's samurai, aren't you? You're thinking samurais, you're thinking ninjas, you're thinking bladed weapons.
Yeah.
Their saws are as good as their swords. It's that simple. And with something like this pull saw is ideally suited for cutting through plastics, particularly resins.
It's
dense
brilliant.
plastics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's all we use now.
And if you look at the way the teeth are arranged, you can see the specific pattern of the teeth. They're slightly sort of on the back foot because you're pulling on them, but they've got some good clear teeth with plenty of distance in between them. So when you're cutting through the resin, the saw blade doesn't get bunged up, it doesn't start skidding about, it clears all the material out straight away.
That's it.
So you get a really nice cut. And the other problem with cutting plastics, particularly with a metal blade, is that there's always a bit of friction. And the problem is with that friction, it kind of polishes the surface of the plastic, and the saw skids around on top of it. I mean, anybody who's tried to cut it with an abrafile or anything like that will know. But with something like this is deliberately set up to cut plastics. The characteristics of the plastics are taken into account. So I would suggest that this one, because it's Japanese made, is not going to be a cheap one. But with blades, you get what you pay for, don't you?
Exactly. I mean, they vary from 10 to 45.
Yeah.
I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, once you've had one of these, you won't go back to cutting your resin. Now, I know most of you guys get your kits and they're already pre-assembled, etc., pre-cleaned, like we tend to do for people, but strongly recommend these guys. These guys, we've got through that many, we've worn them out. When we're cutting the sprues off for you, this is what we use. But one thing, be careful, because they are mega sharp. Yeah,
it's very easy. My rule as a technology teacher is always keep your fingers and your hands behind the blade.
Yeah.
What you don't,
sharp,
it's very easy when you're holding something to rub these across the top of your knuckles.
Yeah, the amount
I mean,
of
yeah. So make sure you've got clearance, because it's a Japanese saw. Or gloves. If you get a good pair of riggers gloves.
Yeah, they're the ones.
The riggers gloves are ones that I would use, or a pair of expensive gardening gloves. But this is lovely. I mean, looking at it, I can see by the nature of the surface there. I can see by the pattern on the sort of milling on the surface and stuff, and the temper of the blades. The teeth itself are highly tempered. So even though the blade is slightly flexible, these tempered teeth are actually heated to a high temperature. It makes them a bit more brittle, but it makes them super sharp.
Also, you can change the blade. All you do with changing the blade is just tap the blade that way. Again, as you're putting if you look very, very closely there, the blade goes that way and it kind of hooks around here. So there's a hook on the blade. So all you do is hook it round the piece there, tap it in. Just be careful with that, guys, if you get one, because it is super sharp. And I think you can probably see there the make of it. It like you say, this thing will take your fingers off if you're not careful.
I mean, you could actually buy these things for cutting wood, actually. Japanese saws are legendary.
Yeah.
They're lovely. They're like samurai swords. You might pay an awful lot of money for them, but they stay sharp forever. And the convenience of having that, and you don't have to use an Allen key or anything to get it out. You just tap it and out it clicks. And
just be careful with them.
Well, just be careful with it.
Just be careful.
So that's our first product we're looking at. We've got another one to look at, haven't we?
We have. I'm not familiar with these, but you working in a school might be familiar. Does anybody know what these are? The kids have them as poppers. What's that all about?
It's a kind of like it's what we call fidget toys nowadays.
That's it,
fidget toys, and you give a kid a bit of bubble wrap, and she'll spend 20 minutes popping the little bubbles quite happily. So if you want to keep them quiet, you don't want to fuss, give them all a piece of bubble wrap, and off they go, pop, pop, pop.
So this is basic. This actually is designed to keep people. If you look very carefully, it's designed to keep people. You pop them in. I mean, we've all done it with bubble wrap. Now, as you notice, we're being inclusive.
It's a rainbow coloured one.
Fair enough.
So anyone can use this. You don't have to feel like your gender is being singled out when you use this rainbow one, because it's the rainbow and it represents everybody.
Everybody,
doesn't it?
But anyway, back to what it's about. So this is designed for keeping kids occupied. Weird, but there you go. That's what it is. Do you know what those guys use it for at this workshop? Simple. We're all lazy. We put our paints in there. So you put your little bit of paint in. So if you've got your blacks, your whites, your reds, your yellows, you put your paint in when you're mixing it. Little Q drops in there. Paint away. End of the day. Let it dry.
Pop it out. Because it's silicone.
Simple.
Virtually nothing sticks to silicone.
Simple.
So it's just pop out the dry paint, and it means you don't have to wash it basically.
Now this one I'm pretty sure was supplied to us by Mike Parker, but so I believe these are available in that well-known designer outlet, Primark.
There you go.
A quid. That's at least
well worth it. And the other thing is, of course, with them being that shape, They tessellate nicely. So if you're using a bigger range of colours or you're just using it for one set of tones, you can put them on the table. They bump up against each other. They make a nice big mat. It means that you don't waste space as well. So the fact that they tessellate makes it good.
You can actually get these, like I said, from places like Primark. You can get them from online. They're not expensive. A couple of quid, £3, £4. Safe cleaning everything. All you do, pop it out. It's simple.
I would think that you can probably get an official version of this online somewhere, which is actually down as a palette, which would probably be about 20 times as much.
Yeah.
So basically, do a little bit of a net search for that. If you put fidget toy or fidget popper, it should come up.
And the guys at the workshop use these all the time. What we're going to do is we're going to feature a few tips and tricks and a few products that we're going to do, but we thought we'd share these two because it's simple. I mean, I would have never thought about this, but there you go, guys. I mean, saves cleaning your palette out, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well done.
There you go. Till the next time. Speak to you soon.
Take care.
Go.
Hi, UKGK TV back again. My name's Bill. This is Bryn.
Hi.
This is Steve.
Hiya.
Now, Bryn is the creative director of Horror Hands.
Yeah.
If you'd like to explain what Horror Hands is.
So I've got a YouTube channel called Horror Hands, which is everything to do with horror movies. So we have a lot of pick-up videos, movie reviews, and we talk about a lot of the creatures and monsters and the model kits that you guys do, that my dad paints, and they're all showed over there on the Horror Hands YouTube channel.
So it's a YouTube channel. It's called Horror Hands. It's Horror Hands, not like what I did, looking for horror hounds, right? Kate Bush thing there going on. All one word. Yeah. It's well worth having a look because this guy's knowledge of horror movies is encyclopedic, to say the least. And he's got the biggest video collection of horror movies I've ever seen. Literally, it's like every wall of every room is covered in
quite
there.
Quite a few movies, yeah.
There's quite a few, and his knowledge is encyclopedic, right back to the 1930s, right up to the present day, and he knows more than I do about these things, which is always amazing because I know way too much according to my wife. So you make the kits, you review them.
Yeah.
So how did this kit obsession start?
Well, like I say, Bryn started his channel a few years ago.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago.
And mainly it's DVD based. And then I started doing the kits, and it gave me a little bit of an avenue to be able to show them off, you know, and it was it was a good way of that one too.
Yeah, they're nice companion pieces to go along with like the movie reviews and the things that I talk about. And to be honest, like my dad's work is kind of like that good. I thought people would want to see it and people should see it and get some like appreciation.
So so you actually put up stage by stage videos.
Yeah.
So if you like me and you're constantly in search of inspiration and tips for painting and things like that, and you want to see something start off in this raw resin form and end up a completely finished kit, and there's quite a few of the videos will take you right the way through the process.
Yeah, we show it for sort of when he first gets it, and then we sort of overlap to each stage of the painting.
Yeah.
So your question obviously is, what was your first kit that you did in this kind of oeuvre? You know, not necessarily your first kit ever, because it's probably an Airfix Spitfire, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then the Aurora.
Yeah.
Basically, like I said, I'd never used an airbrush, and I saw a bust of Christopher Lee. Well, Christopher Lee's my hero, you know, and I just thought, wow, I really like that, but I've got to paint it. And I was doubting my skills, whether I could paint it or not. But I thought, well, I'll buy an airbrush. I bought an airbrush, a cheap airbrush and a compressor, and started to airbrush this thing. And I just thought, wow, I love it. I just love it. And I found it so therapeutic. And then the end result, I was so pleased with it and proud of myself. Bryn said, I've got to put that on my channel. I've got to show that off.
So your channel existed before the model obsession?
Yeah, quite a couple of years before.
So what started you off with that? What made you think, I want to do this? Because it's a lot of people think about doing stuff like that, but actually the mechanics and the energy that you have to put into it puts a lot of people off. But you have done this for quite a while now, haven't you?
The YouTube channel, yeah. So it started because I have quite a large horror movie collection, and I like movies and like talking about movies, but I don't have a lot of people that I can talk to them about. And I watched a lot of YouTube just to watch some channels to see other people's collections, and often thought I've got a similar collection and it'd be nice to engage with these kind of people. So it came from that really. and I just started doing some little videos showing some of the films that I liked, some of the films that I was picking up, and it's grown from there. And I've got quite a nice group of people that watch my channel. I've made some nice connections, made some friends that I've met up with. And as I say, with my dad starting his models, it's given me an avenue to show them as well, and let people appreciate them.
We first met at UKGK show.
Yeah.
What last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Good show.
And you come all the way down from Nottingham.
Yeah.
Right. So do you think then that because we often have this conversation about the hobby, maybe more in isolation of the kits, but do you think there's do you think that the notion of watching horror movies is a current thing with younger people? Do you think this is something that's going to carry on, or do you think it's less and less people watching films in the same way as I used to and you used to?
I think personally myself, it's probably bigger now.
Okay.
You know, I've seen, like I say, we've been to horror cons and other conventions, and I can remember a few years ago when we first attended, they weren't that busy. No. But now you're walking around these events, so there is definitely more interest in this kind of thing. You know, I don't know about what you think.
In terms of watching films the way that sort of you used to, and I guess myself when I was younger, I think it's changed a great deal because of technology and things like streaming services, and sort of going to the cinema is no longer the social thing that people do and experience movies in the same way.
That was kind of my next question for you. Do you think there's a difference watching a horror movie on a TV screen than you would in, say, a cinema? Because the cinema's a real experience, isn't it? Yeah. Some movies I've seen in the past, like stuff like Dr. Zhivago and stuff, you can only really appreciate it if you see it on a big screen.
Yeah.
So what modern horror tends to be a little bit more smaller than that, I think. Would that be right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to make as big a splash in terms of cinema and things now. It's a lot of kind of big budget mainstream movies that kind of do that, and I feel that horror kind of lurks beneath that. But when you talk to people and like myself on my channel, there's a huge fan base for it, but it exists on more of a cult level rather than a mainstream commercial level. So yeah.
So if there was a kit, for instance, that you'd love to see produced that you've not seen.
Yes.
Because, you know, you walked around here and I noticed that you basically, one of the things that impressed me about you was the fact that you named every movie, every one of these came out. And I was thinking, oh, well, he's young because I'd be going, oh, that's from, you know, what's it? But if there was a kit, if anybody watching is looking for a new kit to produce a new sculpt, what would you like to see?
So I really like my 1980s horror and sort of 1980s creature features and things like that. One thing I'd like to see, which I've not seen much, is a Toxic Avenger bust. So perhaps like a Head and Shoulders bust, get the mop in there as well, and a nice.
Is it Troma?
Troma, yeah.
There's Toxic Avenger 1, 2, and I think it goes up to about 5, doesn't it?
Yes, Toxic Avenger Part 4, Citizen Toxie is the last one, but yeah, something like that would be pretty cool.
So Toxic Avenger, actually, yeah, you're right. I've not seen anything.
You don't see a lot.
It lends itself to a kit, doesn't it?
That's I think that would be quite impressive.
Okay, so Toxic Avenger and another more sort of. What else?
I'd quite like to see, and they've done a couple, but something with like Jaws and the shark itself. So maybe like a diorama style set of the boat going down and the shark's head. I think that would be really impressive and a good challenge to paint. So that would be good.
So what's your next movie you're going to review?
Do you know? I'm not sure yet. I'm going to do my next thing is like I do an end of month update with all the films that I buy. So there'll be everything.
So what stood out this month?
What stood out?
Either good or bad.
Yeah. So the first thing that
doesn't have to be good.
Well, yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is The Nun 2, but it was a bit of a disappointment.
Right. Because The Nun is quite a scary movie.
It is, yeah. And I like the first one, and I love The Nun, and they say you do a bust of it, which is really, really impressive. So I was very eager to watch the second one, but it was a bit of a disappointment. The Nun character was great, but the film itself, not so much.
Do you think it's the writing of it, or the direction, or what? Or was it a bit of both?
Bit of both, I think. It was one of those films where I'd just seen it all before, and it never really did anything that made me think, wow, that's going to stay with me. So yeah, a little bit underwhelming, but I'm trying to think what I've seen this month, which I've really enjoyed. But again, I have to say it's a lot of the older stuff that I've.
So
watched.
we go back. I mean, obviously, I looked at the video and I saw your collection. It goes back quite a way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It goes back. You've got some quite sort of vintage movies there in your collection. You got some real classics.
Yeah.
What would you say from the past? Say the 50s and 60s. Where would you be there? What would you be talking about movie wise there?
In terms of the 50s and 60s, I like the old 1950s creature features, so the giant atomic bugs,
Gila Monster.
and
Giant Gila
things
Monster,
like
them,
that. Yeah,
Big Ants. Yeah.
them, Black Scorpion,
Yeah.
things like that. And then the flip side of that, I like the classic sort of Hammer, so Dracula, Frankenstein, and things like that. But yeah, the old black and white giant bug movies, I've got a soft spot
I have
for
to
them.
say, I quite like the giant bug movies in a way because there's definitely an end to them.
Yeah,
The bug is vanquished at the end.
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
The only one that worried me as a child was the blob
yeah,
because they drop it in the Arctic in a case in the end, don't they?
yeah.
And it
Freeze
freezes.
it, yeah.
As a kid, I just got very anxious about the fact that in the Arctic
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
massive wooden crates.
Global warming.
Global warming. So there you go. There's a reason not to let global warming happen. The blob is in the Arctic.
the blob
in a
will get
wooden
unleashed.
crate, and it will be unleashed. In a 6-year-old brain, that was trauma. That
Yeah.
really was
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah, the blob was an interesting one because it wasn't like an insect that you could bring down. It was
No,
like gelatinous.
What would you
Thing.
think of the remake? Because I'm assuming you've seen the remake.
Yeah, the 80s one. I like that. Yeah, it's one of the better remakes. I like what they did with it and turned it into a more 80s style film.
Yeah, because there's a lot of gruesomeness in it, wasn't there? Because
Yeah.
the blob,
Yeah.
you actually saw the result
Stripping
of it,
them, wasn't it?
stripping the
Strip-
flesh
Yeah.
off people's
Yeah.
bones and stuff.
Yeah,
And that because I think at the time was it, I don't know, the director was it Toe Pooper or something like that?
Chuck Russell.
Chuck Russell. Right, okay, that's right. I'm thinking Invaders from Mars.
Yeah,
or-
so it's a good
So
one
the
as well.
Invaders
Yeah.
from Mars.
Yeah.
I quite like the remake of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the original because the original one is so spooky.
Yeah,
It is like watching a ghost story.
Yeah.
With all those
and they fall through
extended sets
yeah.
and stuff like that. It's beautiful. So there's a lot there. It's nice to see somebody as young as yourself who just kind of still appreciates that.
Yeah,
So I was just sitting
absolutely.
there early on doing a chat with somebody and we're talking about science fiction and how the 60s was our major one. And you're saying that the 80s earlier on is your age.
Yeah,
And we talked about special effects, didn't we?
yeah.
So
yeah.
tell us, just remind the viewers what we decided about, what I thought about special effects, what you thought
Yeah, I
about special
think
effects.
we had a chat about sort of the practical special effects of the 1980s being the more enduring effects in cinema. And CGI is great, but you can't beat a practical effect and how it looks on screen. And I've always said, even a bad practical effect, the actors are still there fighting against it, and they can touch it and
And
it's
their
there.
emotions, if they're good actors, their emotions are enough to carry it
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
So we talked about Reanimator.
Yes, we did, yeah.
For anybody that's never read the original Reanimator story, it's called something like Herbert West Reanimator.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic story. It kind of sort of like a Frankenstein style story, but it's set in America in the early 20th century. It's a fantastic story. You've got to read it because it is quite spooky, and the way that it's written is absolutely superb. So you need to look at that. So, but the movie we agreed was like a tour de force, really, wasn't
Yeah,
it? We think that
fantastic
for me,
film.
if I think of 80s kind of schlocky, kind of horror with lots of rubber effects but real time effects, there's a scene where two fingers and an eyeball are combined and
Yeah.
they come alive with this liquid sort of life serum,
Yeah.
and it goes running around the couch, and it kind of, I think it attack the cat at one point.
Yeah,
Or
the
does the cat picks it up, doesn't it? And it,
Yeah, the cat
Yeah.
has a hard time in that movie. I remember that. Yeah,
And the cat gets reanimated.
yeah,
eventually,
it
doesn't
does. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we love movies like that. So what's next on the old bench then?
Oh, crikey me. I've come to pick some kits up now, so I've got quite a lot to go at, you know, but I think possibly the Kraken,
Okay.
could be Jason Voorhees,
Is this the
Clash of the
resin?
Titans. Yeah,
Okay,
the
resin crack. It's a
yeah,
big piece of kit. That is.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
big kit.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm running out of room,
Running out of room.
fast.
Yeah. Shelf killers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So,
yes.
yeah. So obviously, there's a lot of life left in horror, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
life left in horror, and hopefully, somewhere along the line, the hobby and films, they meet each other, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
And
quite
I
nicely.
think, without the films, you can't have the hobby. And
Yeah.
a lot of the times, I would imagine some of the horror directors of the future will be inspired to do the films because of the kits that they've
Yeah,
made, maybe,
hopefully, yeah,
the
that'd
things
be
that
good.
they've seen. And
Yeah.
when we go to conventions, whether it's a kit convention or whether it's a horror convention, we meet a lot of people with like-minded.
That's right.
It's usually good, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
great.
beauty of
Yeah.
it, you know.
It really
Yeah.
is.
So thanks for coming, and it's been amazing to talk to you, and it's nice to see extended sort of feeling that there's life in the hobby with younger
Yeah,
people.
definitely,
yeah,
You know.
yeah.
So,
And it's good that it's like a family thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Hopefully
cheers.
see you again soon on UKGK TV, and it's goodbye from me.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye for me.